everybody, welcome back to the Coach's Corner crew. We're here tonight back in Connorsville. It's been over a month, everybody, since we've been able to put on a show for you. And we're glad to be back, or at least I'm glad to be back. It's Monday night. It's May 12th. It's been, like I said, it's been over a month since our last show that we had Denny Doral on and we had the other guys here with us. But spring schedule's a little tough. Weather, our baseball games get changed. Our schedule here at work's been a little bit tricky. So I'm glad to be back with you tonight, doing a solo episode. And we're gonna miss Wes, Huffy, Travis, Rob, Brandon. But I thought we better get back on the air and get back to saying hey to all you good listeners and viewers. So tonight, again, we're here in the Corner Crew office, a little different angle than what we usually have. Since it's just me, I was going to sit back and keep my desk here. But the subject for tonight, and first, let's get our greetings. Hope everybody had a great Easter. We hope everybody had a great Mother's Day. Yesterday, Mother's Day, for all you fine mothers out there. Hope that went well for everybody. And also, since the last time we've seen you, got a national championship NCAA basketball winner. That was Florida. Denny Doral, you picked it right. And I was close. I had Houston. What a game, though. Those final games, as we were saying, when the guys were all together, that tournament did wind up. It didn't have quite as many upsets or anything, but it definitely had some great tournament games. And so it didn't disappoint. But again, I was a little bit in between. I didn't really much care. But it was great games and worth watching for everybody. Baseball season, we know, is well underway. High school season at Franklin County is moving right along. They're getting a little bit towards the end. And they're having some ups and downs here and there. Man, the track season, golf, girls softball, everything's moving right along. We hope that we get a chance maybe to talk to our spring coaches. Might have to try to do that by telephone conference, but we'll see how it goes. I can't make any promises, but maybe there's a slight chance we'll get to. But really, besides that, tonight what I'm going to talk about is baseball. And not just the Reds. I got my Reds hat on. We got a Reds sign there from 1971. But what my topic is going to be tonight is growing up with baseball in Brookville, Indiana. And how do I start this?
Yeah.
I'll just start it with me and then kind of talk about how it was growing up and how baseball was back in Brookville in the day. When I got started playing baseball, and I think maybe I mentioned this in the pilot or one of the early episodes, we moved to New Fairfield from where my dad had built a house, and we had moved from our home, the Mount Haven Motel, up to the little subdivision of New Fairfield. Well, in getting to know a few of the neighborhood kids, they were always playing wiffle ball or some version of baseball. So one night, I remember I was pretty new to the neighborhood. They were in Froman's backyard. My good friend Beth Brown, her brother Brad, seemed like a couple other neighborhood kids were around. And we were playing sort of a baseball game with a shorter, small, kind of like flat basketball and some old bat. And they had some homemade bases set up. And we started playing sort of a baseball game. And Beth's dad, Mike Froman, was there. And he was kind of back there helping, or maybe he was playing along. And again, this is just an informal thing in the backyard. And he goes, hey, you act like you kind of like baseball. Would you like to join a Pee Wee League team? Season's already started, but we could get you on our team. I'm the coach. And I said, well, it sounds fun to me. I went home and asked my mom and dad, and shoot, back then it was just some little card you filled out. And I don't know if it had insurance, permission, $10, something like that. So I handed it in, and I was on the Reds, the Pee Wee League T-ball team, the Reds. And it was funny. I don't know what's back there. One of our signs is moving around or something. It was a red T-shirt, just said Reds across, no sponsor, just a solid red hat, and you wore jeans. And those who had spikes, you wore spikes, and or just basic old Chuck Tanner tennis shoes or whatever you had. So I remember joining up with them, and I can't remember who all was on the team. Obviously, Brad Froman was, and there was a couple of girls, Jennifer Wildman, Mickey Stivers, Jeff Race was on it. I think my buddy Sean Hall was on the team. Probably a lot of others that I'm just forgetting. I mean, that was all the way back in like 1976. So I remember the first game, getting to play, and everybody batted, and you hit off the tee. There was no coach pitch. And hey, I guess I hit the ball. I don't remember fouling out or striking out or anything. But I remember getting put in at catcher, and there was a play at home, and the ball went past me, and I grabbed it. And back then, you'd grab it and then hand it to the umpire. And the umpire was just looking at me, and in my confusion, another run scored. And I remember Mike, it seemed like he yelled at me, but he basically just told me, hey, if you're going to play baseball, you got to wake up and pay attention to what's going on. And knowing me at that time in my life, I probably was borderline in tears and didn't want to come back. But I did. And from that point on, I kind of understood how the game worked and how it was when you were out in the outfield or playing catcher. I never got to be at the pitcher spot or third base or first base or shortstop. That was for the better players. But we got through that first year and really wound up liking it. And from that point on, started collecting baseball cards, bought at Kelly's store there in New Fairfield for $0.10 a pack. Brad collected cards. Beth, I think, collected cards. And we started to really get into baseball and couldn't wait for the next year. But sad thing was Mr. Froman moved, and he worked for Ford up here in Connorsville, I think, and they had to move, I think, to like Sandusky, Ohio or something. So lost my friends there, which I became friends with them later on again. But David Griffin moved up to New Fairfield. Wonder what all happened to old Dave. He was a big, strong kid, and he played a lot of baseball. So me and him just played wiffle ball all the time. Played down in a tennis court. And I think David was already playing Little League. Again, he was several years older than me, and it seemed like he was the greatest player ever. He would knock him out of the tennis court. I would hit a few homers, but he didn't have no mercy. He was all about sort of making you earn your way, which I appreciated. But next year, the Pee Wee League season came along, had a new coach. I just remember his name. I think he was a conservation officer. His name was Bybee. And he was real nice. And, you know, we went on and played the league. And I remember we seemed like we won as many as we lost. Again, I think Jeff Race was there. Jeff was a great player. And Sean was there. Probably others that I just don't remember. But it's funny, me and Todd Phillips were talking about the Pee Wee League teams were all named after the National League. And if I remember, it was the Reds, the Padres that my friend Kelly Naylor played on. There was the Astros that seemed like maybe John Kuntz or John Berkeley played on. The Cubs, Todd was on the Cubs. The Mets, I think Ron Atkins, my future Babe Ruth coach, coached the Mets. And seemed like that might have been it. It was about 6 teams or something like that. And we had fun. I remember feeling like I did really good. Played some third base, got to be the catcher. He, for some reason, thought catcher was real important in Pee Wee League, which it made the game go faster. And I love Johnny Bench, so I guess I thought it was an honor to be the catcher of the Reds. And just got more into baseball, and the games were better, and I just played better. And it's funny, this mitt that I brought out tonight, my mom bought me this at Kmart, and it's an old first baseman's mitt, and it's pretty dried out now, but I remember that's what I used playing catcher or the other positions, and really thought I had something there. And boy, it's pretty dry, folks. It's hard to even play catch with it now. But it was a Regent mint, bought at Kmart, I think, in Connorsville or Oxford, one or the other. But that season went on. Wintertime came, got to learn more and more about baseball. Couldn't get enough about baseball. More baseball cards collecting. My friend Danny Price, who was our neighbor, he was a year younger than my brother Mark. But shoot, Danny was easily 7 years older than me, and he's a friend to this day. We taught me how to play a dice game with baseball cards. And that was just what life was all about. He would trade baseball cards with me. Then when my brother came along, he was all about being with my brother. But he put up with me, he'd play wiffle ball with me, and David Griffin. And we had a good time, really, growing up there in those years and enjoying being outside, just playing sports. And my brother would jump in. My brother Mark would jump in every now and then and join in with us, and that was a lot of fun. But later on then, we moved to where I grew up mostly, just down south of Brookville. And there where Arby's is now, my mom and dad had built a house on what used to be an old farm there. And we moved in there. And the only thing that was a little bit a bummer about it, it was an awesome place to live. Big yard, had barns and room for anything you wanted to do. My mom and dad got me a basketball goal, I remember. And there was just no neighborhood kids to play baseball with. It was just out of town enough to where there really wasn't any neighborhood with it. But hey, we made do. I would throw ball in the garage, rubber ball, them old pink rubber balls, and practiced on my own, played imaginary games in the backyard with wiffle ball, like the Reds versus the Dodgers or Reds versus the Padres, and just kind of really enjoyed just playing homemade baseball games. And it was fun. It seemed like the days went on forever. You just kept on playing. But in the meantime then, I think it was in about 77 or 78, I had to try out for Little League. And Little League then was very much different. There was no minor leagues. It was just straight Little League. You would play 3 years depending on your age. And I think it was 4th, 5th, and 6th graders. So I tried out, and it wasn't everybody making a team. And I'm not trying to sound like, oh, it was so rough or this, that, and the other. But you were all out there in this big group. And they would hit you balls, bring in a batter. I think I've said before, and when Brad Stacy was on, I remember his dad was sort of ran the league and was the guy pitching batting practice all day. And it was scary. He didn't take it easy on anybody. I remember fouling a couple off, and they would go out and throw with you. And then the coaches started to gather, and they started picking. And I don't remember how many was needed, but I remember Brian Huber came along, who was Shane Huber's brother, older brother, and said, hey, toss with me. And I threw him some, and he goes, okay, you're on the Twins. We'll have practice in a Saturday from now or sometime like that. And I remember watching all the coaches and seeing some that looked friendly and some that looked scary. And the guy who I remember looking kind of scary was this man. He was a strong-built guy. He wore sunglasses. He had a hat on, crew cut when he take his hat off. And I was like, boy, I don't know. He looks pretty scary. But show it, because Brian was all nice, and he said, hey, you'll be on with my brother Shane, and so named a few of the guys on the team who were also getting picked. I think John Kuntz got picked with the Twins. So we show up for practice, and who's the coach? The crew-cutted guy. It looked like he just was a sergeant in the Army or something. Well, he wasn't in the Army. He was a retired Navy guy, and it was Ed Ballman. And I was like, oh, gosh, here's the scary-looking military guy. But honestly, it was awesome. Ed was great. His son, Shane, was on the team. Brian helped coach. If I remember, we had like Brent Shelton, Kevin Waltz, Brian Fulmer, I think Brian Geis, John Kuntz, Shane, of course, me, and this big, strong kid who looked like Tom Seaver. His name was Steve Stern. And obviously you could tell right away he was the best player on the team. And what Steve would always talk about, it was how good they were the year prior, when it was like him as the pitcher and Jimmy Pelser, the catcher. Jimmy we knew from high school and playing softball. And how he just didn't think this year's team was going to be near as good. And he was kind of right. Steve was by far one of the best players in the league. And in the beginning, all he did was catch, because nobody could catch him. I mean, Shane would try, but Steve just threw hard. He was wild. But Shane got better. I remember John Kuntz tried to catch a few times. I was on the bench there mostly in the beginning. But we weren't winning many games. And then finally there was one night, I was still on the bench. I think Ed had gave me a chance or two to bat. But we played another team that was struggling, the Red Sox. I remember Steve Simmemeyer was on that team, and I think the Bowling twins, Terry and Tony Bowling, might have been on that team. And by gosh, we won the game. And I remember coming home so happy because my brother-in-law, Terry Turner, was there, and the Red Sox had been his team when he played in Little League. And again, let me jump back a little bit. The Little League field back then was down by the bridge. That's the 101 bridge. It's this little old field, nothing fancy. It had 10 at the backstop. The ball smacked off of it. The coaches would umpire. There was an old scoreboard. There were bike trails. And there was a little concession stand. There was like a little like U-Haul looking thing. And Pete Schomburg's mom, Pat Schomburg, served lollies, bubblegum Bub's Daddies, some hot dogs, and little Cokes, little Pepsis or Cokes in these little like plastic cups. And if you won the game, the coach would buy you a pop. Well, that was our first pop. And it was a thrill. Didn't even care that I played in the game. Maybe I got the bat. I don't remember. But as the season went on, it was really memorable that first season that Ed put me over at first base, and I was petrified. I mean, I was one of the young guys on the team. You know, Kevin Waltz could throw hard, and Dan Walter, Dan. Dan, one of my best friends, along with John. Dan was already good enough to be playing. We were on that team together, and we had old gray, heavy uniforms that said Twins on them, Wayne Derry on the back. But if I remember the teams, it was the Yankees, which were the best team, coached by Terry Stacy. The Orioles, who was coached by Ron McCool, had like Tim McCool. Tim was still able to play then. He was big and tall. would catch and pitch. Mark, his younger brother, who was my age, he was a great player. Chris Hensley was on that team. Don't remember who else. Who else? The Yankees were great. They had a bunch of great guys. Brad Stacy, Todd Amy, of course. Todd was the first guy I got the bat against, and I was petrified to play against him. Scary, but later on became a good friend. Who else? There was the Indians. They were sort of coached by Keith Tebby and Red Sylvester Allen. Red was great when he umpired. He would always have a cigarette burning and set the cigarette back on the rock. And then after the half inning was done, he'd take a puff of the cigarette. But Red was great because he knew baseball. Keith Tebby helped him. Then the Red Sox, I don't remember who coached the Red Sox, but I remember Steve Simmemeyer, great player, was on that team. Then there was the Tigers. Rob Jewell was on that, the Whittemores. And I think that Chet Whittemore coached that team. And again, I'm probably forgetting. So, the White Sox. Kelly Naylor was on the White Sox. Todd Phillips, Ronnie Jolliffe, Mike Milburn. They were great. They actually beat the Yankees. It was like one of the first I think the Yankees were first, and the White Sox were like the second best team. So I think there was like 6 teams there also. And the second time we played the Red Sox, I was getting to play first base, and we won the game. And I remember I caught the balls. Steve Cern at that time was pitching. Steve later played for Batesville High School and was a great baseball player, awesome football player, played basketball. He was a great 3-sport athlete for Batesville, and then later went on, I think, to play some college baseball or football, and had an outstanding career coaching high school football, I heard. But Steve's brother Dennis, I remember he would help coach, and he was real nice, but he'd went to Brookville High School. I think they lived out in Peppertown. But we got through that first year, Little League, was proud of it, loved it again. More baseball cards bought. I wish I had some of them here to display tonight. But same old routine. Looking forward to baseball season the next year. Well, I was a little disappointed, but it was one of them things that become a blessing in disguise, that Danny Dorrell took over coaching for Ed, and Ed stayed on as the assistant coach. Well, shoot, it was like, oh man, Danny, like I told his son, Danny, he was pretty green that first year, but he made Jeff Selm, and Jeff was a great guy, made him the first baseman, and I was like, but I played first base the year before, and he wasn't having any of it. He said, we'll get you in somewhere, and mostly that meant right field or left field, and I was a horrible outfielder. And I remember just kind of dreading the games. I was awful. It just seemed like I didn't do very good. Maybe I made a catch or two out in the outfield, but it seemed like that was sort of a setback here. And I was like, I don't know about this baseball thing. But the next year came along, and I think that was 79. I think that was my last year in Little League. It all really changed. Beginning of the year, Danny knew more about it. Dan was at shortstop and pitch. John Kuntz was there. Shane Huber was our catcher. Brad Hurdle was on the team. He was like our apprentice. Richard Gaston, Steve Pfister. Brent Lanning joined up with the team. Brent could fly. He played center field. Jeff Brandstetter joined up with us. He played the left field. I think John mostly played outfield. I played third base, would sub for Dan at short when he was pitching. Played second base. Jeff Selm was at first. Steve Pfister was a good pitcher. I think Robbie Canada was on the team. And we really had a heck of a lot of fun. Yeah, I think my friend Tim Canada, who sadly passed away a few months ago, I think he was on the Tigers. Somehow I think Robbie wound up on the Twins. But we just had a blast. Danny was great. Ed was helping. We won a lot of games. I remember we beat the Yankees. Todd Phillips had moved away, came back, was on the Yankees then. He played third base. Neil Williams, socking home runs. Mark McCool was probably the best player in the league. He was on the Orioles. And Chris Hensley and Jeff Pence was on the Yankees, and John Albertson. Jeff Race was on the Tigers. Andy Tebby and Brad Tebby and Doug Kuntz were on the Indians. And this guy, I think his name was Gary Cox. He was a heck of a good player. I think he wound up later playing at Laurel High School. And the White Sox, Kelly Naylor, poor Kelly, he had went from a really good team. The White Sox really struggled. But I remember he had a home run against us. I think they beat us. And they only won a couple of games. So Kelly was still one of the better players in the league. And I tell you what, I always said I remembered coming home after one of the games. My mom took me to a famous recipe chicken there in Brookville and watched the 1980. The 1979 All-Star game. And that's the one where Dave Parker made the great throw. But it just made me remember a lot of things about baseball. Was won as many games as we lost. Just had a blast. And just remember loving baseball. We had new uniforms that year, production credit. And we thought we were, which Ed Ballman ran that, we thought we were the top of the league because we had two different kind of hats. They let us wear a orange hat with mesh in the back the first half of the season. And then we wore black hats with the production credit emblem the second half. So we really thought we were the bomb. We really did. But then baseball moved on, and you had to try out for what was called Babe Ruth. And at that time, there was only 3 Babe Ruth teams in Brookville. Smith Development, which was after Don Smith Lumber Company, I think. The Pepsi, which was Terry Stacy and Ron McCool kind of combined. And Valley House. And I think Ed Ballman actually was coaching the Valley House team. And I was like, well, shoot, I'll make that team. Ed had picked me, but I remember the tryouts being real competitive because there was only 3 teams and they only needed about 4 kids on each team. Shoot, we had the whole class of ours coming in to play. And we had tryouts and this, that, and the other. And I remember like, okay, I'll get picked. But I didn't get a phone call. And my mom asked, shouldn't you be hearing about baseball? And I was like, yeah, I think so. And finally, I got a call from Lou Amy, who was coach of Smith Development. And he said, hey, we've had a couple of practices, but you can be on Smith Development now. But that laid out the groundwork that I hadn't been picked. Somebody had quit. Excuse me. And I think it wound up to be a friend of ours, Russell Ramsey, who was a pretty good kid. Sadly, Russell died when we were young and on a motorcycle accident, mini bike accident. But I think Russell had quit, so I got to be on Smith Development. And I was scared to death. If I remember, it was like Jeff Race, Jeff Pence were some of the younger guys. Jeff was a year older than us, but he always played at our age level because of his birthday. Shane Blair, Rob Jewell, Tim Smith, Todd Amy, Ronnie Jolliffe. They were just this big, older, scary team. And we practiced. Lou was the coach, and he was a school teacher there, Todd Amy's dad. And I liked Lou. But I hardly ever played. And the other teams were out of Liberty and College Corner. There were 2 Liberty teams and a super good college corner team that had some guys like, I think his name was Dale Murray and Terry Risch and Darren Schaefer and Rod Shepler, and a whole bunch of guys played for them Union County teams. And they were later on really good players for Union County High School. Actually won the sectional my junior year in baseball. And so I just remember always being scared. I think I got hit by a pitch early by Rod Shepler, big lefty. He beamed me. Todd Amy, I remember, actually gave me encouragement, said, hang in there, Dad'll get you in. And he started to get me into like right field and stuff. But I remember by that time, guys, forgot to mention, I was using this old mitt that my brother brought home from the Marine Corps. And it was just this humongous old dried up mitt. Brad Tebby, you'll be glad to see this. Brad Tebby later on used it in softball, and he wrote "it" in it. Can't see that on there. But I used this all through middle of Little League, all through Little League. Again, my brother found it in the Marine Corps playing somewhere and said, here, you can use that mitt. And I used it all the way up into high school. And it wasn't in good shape. Mr. Hughes told me quit using that mitt because I dropped a ball or two using it. It was pretty flabby. And later on used it in softball till Brad Tebby wound up using it. And Brad named it "it." But Babe Ruth went on, and second year was a little bit better. Lou was still coaching. Todd Amy was a good player. But we were horrible as a team. I remember Tim Canada joined up and was playing with us. Jeff was good. And I think Andy Tebby was on the team then. And, Bobby Shepard, who was a good guy, super nice guy. He played first base. But Lou started playing me some at third, and gosh, it just seemed like I was awful. Just rarely got hits. Just seemed like I was terrible. Jimmy Lovins was on the team. He was a good player. The most memorable thing about that year was riding home in Lou Amy's pickup truck. No seat belts, nothing. He had a cab on it. And there was one night where they came to the ballpark over at Union County's field and said, get out of here. There's been a tornado touchdown somewhere in Union County. So we got in the back of Lou's truck, and it was pandemonium. There was storm, and Lou stopped off at a farm, and we went and stayed the rest of the storm out. And this farm lady's nice enough lady and man farmer put us up in their basement, and we rode out the rest of the storm and got back in Lou's truck and went on. But the tornado was never right where we was. So we weren't in any bad danger. But we thought it was exciting. But that year got over. And one thing that was a little different was I think I remember Casey Atkins joined the team. And his dad, Ron Atkins, started helping Lou coach. And Ron was an unusual guy. He was very laid back, wore his hat on top of his head, and had slippers on. And he was an interesting guy. And he'd coached in Little League and with the Senators. That was kind of like the Cedar Grove team. And Casey joined up with us. And seemed like Casey had one of them weird birthdays too, where he was my age, but he was playing Little League or Babe Ruth like a year younger. But our last year, you could just tell it was different. Lou had stepped down, and I knew I was going to kind of miss Lou. But Ron, right away, his son Gary Atkins was helping. I could just tell right from the beginning he was going to give us a new start. And I can remember almost every guy on the team. I wound up playing third base all year. Andy Tebby was at short. I think he pitched a little. Casey Atkins played second. Tim Canada, my old buddy, was over at first. Troy Hines, I think Troy was on the Orioles in Little League. He was catcher and played left field. Jeff Race was usually the catcher and also one of the best pitchers in the league. And Jeff was awesome. And Troy pitched. So center field was Neil Williams. Neil had came out, and he's probably on the team all 3 years, really. Neil played center. And right field was a little bit of a mixture of any, like, kind of rotated. Like Jimmy Verku would play some out there. Brad Tebby once in a while. Mark Blades, Jimmy Verkley, David Merrill, who later became a great high school player. All those guys kind of got a chance to play somewhere out in the outfield, or if somebody was missing, if Troy was pitching, one of those guys would come in. And Brent Saxtetter. Brent wound up having a great football, wrestling career. He was Todd Saxtetter's older brother and played baseball at BHS. But he was young, and Brent would come in and pitch and do a pretty good job. And I remember we beat everybody in the league, and we thought we really were something else. We won the traveling trophy. We were only third place in the league. And by that time, there was only 5 teams playing. And because Valley House had dropped out. And I think Shane stopped playing then. And some of the other guys were on Valley House. Or maybe Neil or some of them might have been on Valley House. I forget. Came and played with us. But we had an awesome year. We stole bases. I remember I batted third. It was usually Casey, Andy, me, Jeff, Tim Canada. Seemed like Neil batted 6, Troy, and then a combination of the young guys. And Ron was awesome. He let me steal bases whenever I wanted almost. And if I remember, I didn't get thrown out at all. And at least we beat everybody once and the other teams twice. And the end of the year, we beat, I can't remember, we might have beat one of the Liberty teams, got the traveling trophy, and played College Corner the last game of the year and held on to it. And we were all proud. We had a picture taken with it. And Ron and them got us trophies, little small trophies for third place. And I was so proud of that because I'd never won a trophy of any kind. So that was it. And also that year was also your first year of playing high school baseball. You always, your freshman year, you were still playing Babe Ruth in the summer. And boy, let's go into that situation. Freshman year baseball. Playing for the Brookville High School Greyhounds. Had my jacket. Thought we were something. Boy, all of my friends who remember that year just do it with grit teeth because we had a former major leaguer, Dave Lanning, had came home, one of the best players in Brookville High School history, came home and was the junior varsity coach. And let's just say that was an experience. David came from the Dodgers farm system, was back coaching, probably wasn't real happy about it, but he taught you, but he was scary. Now, later in life, I got to know him, and he was friendly, and he was, away from that career and stuff and things, and he helped Mr. Hughes on the varsity. And the varsity that year did win sectional. Great team with Kevin Bauman, Tim McCool. I think Mark got moved up. Brad Stacy, Joey Tucker, Todd Amy, Darren Brack, Tim Broughton, all kind of great. Jimmy Lovins, lots of great athletes were on that team. And they won sectional. But the next year then, Babe Ruth over, missing it already. And I don't know what's going on. Oh, the IU came down. Sorry, it's our first glitch there. Mike Huff will get that fixed for you. The IU helmet came down. But I was all excited about my sophomore year at high school baseball, and Mr. Hughes worked with us. We worked out all year. I was played CYO, so basketball, so we had plenty of time. There was a young guy by the name of Brian Abbott coaching the JV. We had, I think, John Eversole. Big John helped. Shout out to John, one of the best players in Brookville High School history. He had been playing in college, but found some time to come help us. And he was great. But the problem was Mark McCool and all them had moved up to varsity, and deservingly so. It was Dan Walter. Poor Dan, wound up being one of the best players we had my junior and senior year. But we teased Dan to this day about it. Dan didn't get to play Babe Ruth, so he'd had a few years away. So on that freshman year, we had like 20 guys on the team. There were like 5 or 6 guys that never even got to play. At least I got to play some until I started screwing up. Then Mr. Lanning put me on the bench where I belonged, and I was scared of getting chewed out by the older guys anyway. But Dan, poor Dan, not even to get the pinch run. Me and him would sit down at the old grandstands field with that old dugout. We'd just sit at the edge of it and just was saying, we're never going to get in. And Dan was like, are you kidding? At least you had normal pants. He had some older pair of pants. It looked like somebody took a green marker and made a stripe down it. And Todd was on the team, and Tim Canada, Casey. There was a bunch of us. But we had a lot of fun my sophomore year, but we only got to play like, I was telling somebody the other day, I think we only played 7 games. The rain was horrible. And back then, they never made up JV games. So we only played 7, 8 games. I think we went like 3-5 or 2-6 or something. We just didn't do good at all. And Roger Miller was on the team. Dan played short. Roger pitched, would catch. Todd would play. Oh, that's it. The outfield was Neil Williams, Todd Phillips, and myself. I think I was center field. Neil should have been in center. He was a good center fielder. But we had fun and just yelling at the other team and telling them to get back in the dugout and hoping they wouldn't hit it over our heads. Us 3, we actually did pretty good once as an outfield unit. But we didn't do so good as a team. And we were like, gosh, we're probably done for. And I remember Neil didn't play anymore after that. And the next year we went up on varsity. And they'd had a really good varsity season that year and got beat in the championship game in a sectional. I think Eric Andrews or whatever, some big kid for East Central had a home run to beat them. But we thought we were going to be awesome. But we really didn't do that good. I think we only won like 11 games. It was kind of what you'd say burnout. I think Todd was a little burnout. Brad maybe a little. Jimmy Lovins. Those guys had played a lot of baseball. And I remember Mark pitched all the time, it seemed like. Threw a no-hitter that year. Mark, I hope you're listening. Mark will remember this bittersweet. Mark threw a no-hitter against East Central over at East Central. And we lost the game 3-2 or 4-3. Mark had walked a few guys, but we had error after error. And in fact, I remember the game-winning run scored on an error. And it was terrible because Mark threw a no-hitter, pitched like crazy. Then had nothing to show for it other than a no, just saying he got a no-hitter. But gosh, what a long year. I remember my buddy Jim Price was on the team. He'd moved back. He'd left Brookville for a year and came back. He was always giving up home runs, and Todd would come in and pitch. It was rough. So the season ended, and it was disappointing for the team. Mr. Hughes was upset. Everybody was just ready to be done with it. And I remember then going into my senior year and talking to our track coach, Larry Reebsummer, and he was like, "Hey, are you excited to work out for baseball?" And I was like, "Shoot, I don't know." I said, "I've played all my life." I said, "I just don't know if I'm even going to get a chance to start." I had a horrible junior year. Didn't even get a hit. 9 at bats, 0 for 9. Terrible. No confidence in the field. And I said, Mr. Hughes probably is not even going to want me back. But he says, "Well, come out for track." The track team needed people back then. Chris Hensley, my buddy, was on the track team. And Tom Shea was a friend of mine. He was the true, really good track star. I don't remember who else was on it. Probably some of the Fry boys. I knew all the girls. Jenny Heilman and Sandy Walter and Emily Haas and Betty Jo Haas and Amy Ferris. We had a great girls track team. The boys, not so much. But Chris was always saying, "Hey, at least you hang out with the girls. It's fun." So I was like, "Well, I might do it." Mr. Reebsummer said, "We'll find something for you to do." But I started thinking about it, and Mr. Hughes was like, "Hey, we're going to start workouts." And I said, I went to Mr. Reebsummer. I said, "You know what? I've played baseball since T-ball. I'm going to finish up playing baseball." And he said, "Well, I don't blame you." So I remember going into winter practices and just saying, and I didn't say I goof off, but when you're not a very good player or you're not doing so good, you have a tendency to not concentrate as much and look for shortcuts. But I told myself there was no BS. It was all business. And a lot of the guys were still playing high school basketball. Mark had gotten hurt, but was still up with the team on basketball. And I was like, that's it. No goofing around. Casey and Dan and Tim Canada were sort of leading the team as team auxiliary captains. But the thing is they really changed a lot of things. Was Casey and Tim wound up not playing. It kind of hurt the team, really, because they were good players. Tim would have been first baseman all year. And Casey, I'm sure, would have played second. Dan was really good then and knew he was going to be at short. Mark was going to play pitcher, some center field once in a while. Mark could play anywhere. Wherever you needed somebody for that day, he would play. He could play anywhere. It seemed like he played some center field early in the year. Maybe some third base. Probably, Dan played short all year. But Mark was going to be our main pitcher. Jim Price was going to play outfield and some third base. But we get into the season, and Mr. Hughes really gave me a good chance, and he made me a starting left fielder. I think Todd was in right. I can't remember. I think Mark might have been center field. He probably pitched. I don't remember who was in center field at that time, because Kevin Miller, who was a sophomore, won the second baseman job. So it was kind of like we had Todd Phillips out in right and somebody in center and me in left. Seemed like Jim Price was at third, Dan at short, Kevin. First base was kind of a revolving door of people. Mark and Lance McCool, Mark's younger brother, was only a freshman. Roger Miller was in center. If Roger wasn't pitching, Roger played center till later in the year. There goes that. And the Purdue fans be happy. The IU helmet came down Always a glitch here at the office somewhere. Roger was awesome. Roger pitched left-handed. Roger throughout the year then became the MVP, and I'll get to that. Along with Dan Walter, who I think Dan might have been all conference. But the season gets going, and Lance McCool was catching. Lance was Mark's younger brother. Big, tall Lance. We thought he was like Johnny Bench. He was a freshman, already batting cleanup, was good catcher, and he was a lot of fun. And then Brian Arnett was a sophomore. He was pitching. And I had all my buddies who we weren't the coach's corner crew, but the BBC. We were the bull crap crew is what we were. I'll just call it the Brookville bull crap crew. Tom Caro, Jimmy Verkley, Doug Riley, Mark Blades. We had a big group. Shane Huber was on the team. He was our president. Greg Gilman, Barry Seaman, Pete Schmidt. We had a bunch of guys. We had a lot of young guys then that moved up. David Merrill, Scott Hughes was a freshman. Scott was already coming in and like pinch running and coming in and like laying down sacrifice punts. But the season went along and we were doing good. And I remember, and I'll apologize again to Mark McCool. I apologize. He was a great friend on the team. And Mark was pitching in Centerville, and I just hit a triple and scored, and we got the lead. And stupid me, playing right field, first batter of an inning, like the last inning, guy hits one I should have caught, I drop it. Starts a rally, we lose the game. Mr. Hughes was furious. I think Ronnie back might have made an error. Ronnie was a pretty good player. We had just errors, but mine seemed like the worst. I apologize to Mark. Kept my head down on the bus. Danny Dorrell drove the bus home, my old coach. I was ashamed. Mr. Hughes yelled at me, said, "We're looking for outfielders." And he had every right to be mad. And so it was not long after that that he started making changes. And I can't blame Mr. Hughes for anything. I mean, he's a Hall of Fame coach. And I was pretty realistic about what I was good at and what I was bad at. But he started making changes. For one, Mark got hurt. Mark got hurt, I think, on a quad. And he'd already had a knee injury during basketball. Here was the toughest guy. 4-year played football, quarterback. We had some rough years. Mark, well, I think to my knowledge, Mark, I wish you could call in. Should have gave you the number. I think he only missed one football game in 4 years as quarterback. It was tough. You know, Mark missed about half the season in basketball, went back out for basketball, missed that. And here we are playing baseball senior year. He's out for the year. So we're scrambling. But Mr. Hughes did the right thing. Starts making changes. Brings Scott up, who was already good enough to be playing. Put him at second base. Finally kind of settled on Brian Arnett at first. And Brian was a good hitter already as a sophomore and a good pitcher. He had Dan at short, pretty much Jim Price at third. Todd Phillips came and played a little third if Price was pitching. Outfield, he brought David Merrill up pretty much full time, put him in left. Kevin Miller moved out to center field. Roger would still come and play one of the positions when he wasn't pitching, but it seemed like Roger pitched all the time. And Roger wound up having to catch some as a left-hander because Lance got hurt. David Strohmeyer wound up catching some. Dave was a good backup and a heck of a good base stealer. They'd use him as a pinch runner a lot, and Dave could steal you some bases. But he was the backup catcher. Todd was in the outfield, pretty much right field. And then they had Tony Hartman playing some in the outfield too. So these younger guys came up and started playing quite a bit. John Schnicker would get in some. Richard Scott. I'm naming a lot of the crew members. These were a good bunch of guys. Kelly McMillan. Good old Kelly, left-hander. He got the pitch on some double-header days, I think. I probably named most of the team. But what we had was a great group of friends. When some of us seniors started playing less, we just accepted it that we're going to root for these guys and we're going to cheer them on and do the best we can. And Mr. Hughes was good enough to still get me in games, maybe a doubleheader, a spot start here and there. My highlight was a base hit to help rally to beat East Central. I felt good about that. And he'd get me in and here and there, got me in the sectional and the regional. And I'm skipping. We wound up having a winning record in the regular season. We get the sectional. I guess I already spilt the beans. We play Union County. We're down in that game. Jim Price, I think, gave up a bomb home run. Roger comes in, finishes it up. We win it, win the game. I think Brian Arnett might have pitched some. Next game, I think we played Greensburg. I think Price was pitching again. We're down again. Roger comes in. A combination of him and Brian Arnett shuts them down. We rally. We win the game. And then the championship game, we're playing Batesville. If I remember, we're losing in that game. And Roger came in and shut the door in at pitcher. He was the MVP, folks. Dan was deserving too. Dan was hitting ball, leadoff batter, hitting balls all over, playing great defense. And Lance was back at catcher. We were all in there cheering. Mark was in there cheering in a sling. And by gosh, if we don't win the sectional championship game. There was a great picture of, I don't know if it was Dan or somebody hit a shot to the gap. Todd Phillips scores either the go-ahead run. Jim Price is jumping up in the air. We held on. We rushed the field. And we're just celebrating, throwing our hats. Everybody's having a great time. We win the sectional. And darn it, I thought I had this picture available. After the game, I had a softball game, of all things, that night. Me and Dan and Todd Phillips played softball for our men's league team. Gosh, talk about not being allowed to do that anymore. And rightfully so. We were getting ready to go to the softball game, and Shane Huber had a pretty nice truck. Everybody piled in the back of the truck, and we got our picture taken in front of it, and it was awesome. It was a great picture. It was in the newspaper. We were celebrating, and that was almost like our de facto team sectional championship. Shane took the guys riding up and down Main Street. I had to leave, ran, and had to go do something before the softball game. But it was great. Great times, great memories. It's the end of our senior year. We'd had a little tragedy. A friend of ours had died in an auto accident. And as sad as it was to lose that friend, she was a year younger than us. Everybody in the school sort of bound together. And that happens sometimes through tragedy. You'd rather a tragedy don't happen. None of them are good. But what it did was, I remember everybody came to like the sectional games. We were going to the track sectional, rooting on our track friends. We had a good crowd for baseball. It was kind of, more parents came. It was the end. We were getting out of school. And I remember then, we're out of school, but we got the regional. And I don't remember if we went to Columbus or Rushville or where, but we had to play Connorsville, and they had a good team. And Scott Sargent and different guys like that who I'd known from playing sports. They were great athletes. But Roger Miller pitched a great game. I think we had an error and then a bunt play. And we were winning the game. And they win the game on, I think the winning run got in position off an error. And there was a shot to the right center field or somewhere, and they win the game, tie and win the game. And as bummed out as we were, especially for Dan and Roger, who were seniors and had played so hard, and a good season that Todd wound up having, and Jim Price, Scott Hughes, our buddy, wound up great coach. Greg, I hope you're listening, Greg, younger brother, had a great career. Scott wound up having a terrific career at Brookville. Won sectionals his senior year and maybe in his junior year too. Yes, they did. He wound up winning 3 sectionals. Was a great pitcher, played every position almost. It was bummer for Mr. Hughes and Coach Lanning, Wayne Lanning, and he got me in a pinch hit, and Lance and all the guys who played so hard. And but we rode home, and we ended it all as we began it, a team of friends. And I remember thinking back about almost not playing baseball my senior year, and like, gosh, I'm sure glad I wound up playing. So baseball for me was not only, and I teased my daughters about this, I said, you guys wound up playing way more actual games than I ever did. Now, granted, I was already into softball, played CYO softball. We had great teams as a junior, senior year. Started playing men's league in Brookville my senior year. My friends were on that team. Todd, Dan, Neil was back. Kelly Naylor, Jay Taylor. All of our friends were out there playing. Some older guys, Mr. O'Brien, Mike Scott, Carl Walter was our leadoff hitter. Dan's dad, Carl. And that was awesome. And later on, we'll get into our softball career with those early years, the Brookville teams, which morphed into KSC teams, the Allen's Flea Market team, the FM Tri-Staters, Pit Crew, Brookville KSC, and of course, Rob's Pizza Pete, Rob's Rats, and later on, Door Guys, and Ewing Oil. We'll have a full episode when we have Mike and Wes. Maybe get John Kuntz up here, Steve Kreider, Dan, all of our buddies. But the groundwork was laid from, I'm going to talk about, it's going to be a little kumbaya, so hang in there with me. Baseball, for me personally and for Todd, me and Todd were such into it because we played the dice ball, we had leagues, we had such imagination of it. Dan was a great player. Dan loved it as more as a player, whereas we loved it more as baseball and nostalgia. We knew the history, our Reds players, Jim Cott's one of my favorite players, Johnny Bench, obviously the 85 Reds, Dave Parker, Eddie Milner, Todd's favorite player, Tony Perez. Todd's dad was into it. LD, he later played softball with us. They are the Red Stockings, the official vintage team that Todd and LD played on. I got to play like one game, got to wear the uniform with it. It was just, baseball was just, we were like old school baseball fans. Whether it was wiffle ball, a homemade softball game with our friends back at St. Michael backfield, some sort of Indian ball game, we called it, where you didn't have enough players. Mr. O'Brien organizing game, calling kids down. Maybe a game at Cedar Grove where some of me and the guys, Jimmy Berkeley and Mark Blades, Wrigley ball in my backyard, which was played with a tennis ball and a strike zone on the wall. Gosh, we threw our arms out doing that. Mini wiffle ball with a practice golf ball. We just played about any combination of baseball you could. And for as much coaching as I did, I only wound up coaching officially baseball 1 year. And it was my cousin, Floyd Miller, asked me to coach. It was funny because it wound up to be sort of my old team, which then was called Canoe, Whitewater Canoe. I think Smith Development was elite and then turned into them. Ron Atkins had stopped coaching and he needed a coach. So I coached him and had the Campbell twins, Brian and Brent. I had Justin Seals and Kevin Couch, great hitter. Travis Pelfrey and Ryan Ritz, Danny Eisen, Kevin Reese, Greg Hughes. What a team. We wound up going undefeated. And I was just coaching a couple days before the first game. I was like, well, you got some pretty good pitching. And, I forget who else was on that team. And later we only had 7 players because a couple kids got hurt. And we had such good pitching with Greg Hughes and Kevin Reese and good catching with Kevin Couch and Justin Seals that we would move the Campbells around and play like 3 infielders and 2 outfielders. But the league wasn't the greatest league either. But I always teased my buddy Wes that they couldn't beat us. And Matt Miller was on the other teams and some other guys, Danny Rosenberger. But we had a lot of fun. But I'm glad that we won the league and I went undefeated my 1 year coaching baseball. But of course, coached tons of softball, girls softball, my own softball leagues, and basketball and blah, blah, blah. But I guess me and Todd and everybody's always just going to have that special fondness for baseball. We love the Reds. We love other teams. Just got done watching MLB Presents about the 88 Dodgers. Casey Holman, you'd be proud of me. Rooting for the 88 Dodgers, Oral Hershiser, Kurt Gibson's famous home run. But a lot of our young memories are based off of, Dan always teases us about this, like you guys just remember where you were when a certain baseball event happened. And that's very true. I was at Chris Hensley's apartment at Ball State when the Reds won the 90 World Series. We had a party. Me and Todd Phillips were at Betsy and Lisa Presley's house when Mario Soto lost his no-hitter to the Cardinals, George Hendrick. We were at O'Brien's house when Johnny Bench hit the home run against the Astros. We were at O'Brien's house again when Tom Browning finished the perfect game. You name it. And if there was some special event, I can tell you where we were for it. And I guess that makes us nerds. But that's how special baseball was to us. And Todd, still to this day, has a humongous Hall of Fame collection of baseball memorabilia. We've had special outings at the Hall of Fame, the 10-man out group or 9-man out. The anniversary group that went back in 2019. Gosh, it's already been that long for that. I'm sorry. Yeah, that was in the fall of 2019. And what a trip that was. The 25-year anniversary of our original trip where we went to West Point, New York City. Doug Kuntz went on that one. Jay Taylor, Andy Walter, Doug Walter met us, took us through West Point. Chad Hodson, Todd, John Kuntz, me, of course, Steve Kreider. What a trip that was. Great memories all of our life, for our whole life. But again, baseball to me is always going to be growing up, loving it, learning to love other sports, loving the Reds, loving other players, loving even teams like certain Yankees. Jay Taylor, shout out to your Yankees. Certain Dodgers, certain Astros, Twins, Cal Ripken, Andy Etchebarren, I don't know. Players from any team you could say were favorite teams. You hated teams too, but you just loved the game so much. But I guess that's why, since it's hard to have been scheduling here lately. Mike's getting ready to start farming. Wes has been busy with stuff. I had work at the archive room tonight. So it's we're going to get back to having our guys on. Baseball season, I want to maybe get Jerry Kuntz on and the other coaches. Michael Kristoff doing tennis. Daniel Ward, maybe a phone call for him before his season's over. Perleyberg, who's coaching the girls softball team, and maybe we can get an interview and get the other guys back with us, even if we can do it on phone, which I think the viewers and listeners will be able to hear. But I guess I've already watched. I went over my hour time limit, but I just want to tell everybody I hope baseball has a special part of your life. To all my old cronies that played baseball, some of them are gone. Miss you. A lot of them are still out there doing good things. They've been coaches. They're fans of the game. To Mark McCool and Todd Phillips and missing Tim Canada. Tons of other great baseball. Andy Tebby in the Babe Ruth. Jeff Race in the baseball and softball years. Lots and lots of others. All my great softball cronies. I guess baseball is always just going to have a special part of it. Even though I can hardly name any starting lineups anymore, barely can get you through a Reds roster, I'm always going to love it. It's part of my kids' life, and it's part of my family's life to this day. So if you ever got anything you want to share about baseball, get in touch with us. Send us a message on the Facebook. Send me a text. Send Shelby a text. Send June a text. Get in touch with us any way you can. And let us know something that was special maybe that you thought of baseball. But I'm going to get ready now and sign off here. It's probably got dark outside. It's turned into a rainy night here at Connorsville, Indiana, here at the E.W. Brockman office. I'm going to shut it down. I hope everybody didn't mind me talking for an hour plus about baseball, sharing a lot of good memories. Probably missed a lot of things I should have said. But we'll let you know that we'll try to have an episode coming up maybe in a couple weeks. We got Memorial Day coming up. So everybody, keep in your hearts anybody who served our armed forces, who sadly maybe didn't come back from those engagements, who gave the ultimate sacrifice. I'm a big fan of Memorial Day and all the veterans, past, present, and future. And we'll have our Metamora Memorial Day service Sunday before Metamora. So if anybody's ever not seen that, come to it. We lay the flowers in the canal. And I've been proud to be the MC for that since 2003. So I'm going to sign off. I've held everybody up. Again, on behalf of our other Coaches Corner Crew members, Mike Huff, Wesley, their pictures up there, Travis, Rob Cowan, Brandon Cowan, all of our fans and our friends who we want to get on the podcast. We haven't had on yet, but hope to have on in the future. We're glad to be back after a month plus off, and we'll get back with you again. So everybody, get to a baseball game, get to a young kids t-ball game, a softball game, something where kids are involved, under the lights, get a pop, get a hot dog, sit back, go to a high school game, go to a men's softball game, go to a ladies fast pitch softball game. Go be part of a ball game. You'll love it, and I'm sure you already love it, and it'll make nothing but good memories. So with that ado, I'm going to sign off here from the Coaches Crew Corner office. Nothing else has fell off the wall. We'll fix our IU sign. So from Connorsville, Indiana, we wish everybody health and safety. And we'll see you again here. Oh, the podcast will come out at midnight, Friday, 12 a.m. So watch for us and view in on the Coach's Corner Crew. So everybody be safe and tune in for our next podcast on YouTube and Spotify. Good night, everybody. Thanks for putting up with RA on a solo night. Thank you.